Starting off with the first countdown in the line of yearly countdowns, there were some games where I felt disappointed when I played the games. This usually means I had a high expectation for the game, but ultimately was left wanting more, or wanting a better experience. Or maybe the game I just played was somewhat bad, but not enough to warrant the worst list. Just think of this list as the middle ground between the best and the worst, as I'm not saying all these games I've listed are completely terrible. There are some good aspects about these games, but because the negatives weighed them down a little bit, I didn't wholeheartedly enjoy the entire experience than what I expected. I'm judging these games from how much it disappointed me, not from whether or not I felt the game was good or not. So if I had a high expectation for a game and it dashed down the negatives real quickly, then I consider that more disappointing than a good game turned into a mediocre one. And remember, this is a list of what I played in 2015, not games that released in 2015, just in case anyone's confused. Anyways, this is the top 10 disappointing games I played in 2015. There's nothing more devastating than revisiting one of your favorite games you played as a child, and then realizing that game doesn't live up to par with your expectations. It really pains me to put a game I used to enjoy on this list because I remember the enjoyment I had when I played this game 2 years ago, and a part of me still wishes I can put this game on the best list. But unfortunately, with the amount of awkward pacing I had to deal with and some of the most unimaginable mini-games, I looked down upon the game more than I can really dig deep into it. It also didn't help that I played this game on the hardest difficulty for my return and found the game to be a complete cakewalk. At least compared to other beat-em-ups and hack-and-slash games. There was only one time I ever died in this game, and it was because of this stupid minigame where I had to control this wrapped-up stream. The majority of the enemies can easily be killed using your pom-pom attacks to stun and hit them with the heavy attacks, and if the enemies are immune to dizziness, just spam the Y button. Now that's not to say it's a complete train wreck though. Like I've said before, the humor is still hilarious. Seeing Julia and her decapitated boyfriend interact with her family members just brings out the chuckle out of me. And some of the over-the-top moments are very well entertaining. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough for me to consider this game off of the disappointing entry. It was fun while it lasted, but I think this game was only worth a rental. Unless you're a huge Suda 51 fan, maybe buy this game at 15 bucks. I rarely watch a whole lot of movies. I'm more of a video game guy myself, obvious reasons obvious, but I found myself watching a whole lot of movies this year. Not just the recent ones, but more of the old school movies too. I've seen them all, the good ones, the hilarious ones, the epic ones, and the ones that just want to fucking melt at the bottom of the earth crust! Okay, base, just calm down, and just let it go. Wait, I'm bringing up the topic of movies because the next game I'm mentioning is indeed a movie license game. And while the majority of those games tend to be pretty bad, if South Park The Stick of Truth has taught me anything, is that a license-based game can be fantastic if taking good care of its source material. This next game on the number 9 segment, on the other hand, is not awesome. It's not awesome. When it comes to LEGO video games, I tend to enjoy the ones I've played so far. Before the LEGO movie, my only exposure to the LEGO games were LEGO City Undercover and LEGO Marvel Superheroes, both games I really enjoy. I will say though, compared to any other movie licensed games I played, this one is not bad whatsoever, but it's very underwhelming when compared to the previous LEGO games. From what I've played, the LEGO movie, the video game, is more of the same of LEGO Marvel. Linear platforming, obstacles, and enemies. You go from point A to point B. There is somewhat of an open world in LEGO Movie, but it's so tiny and barren there's really no point in the worlds you reach. I feel as though with any LEGO game, it's only fun the first time you play through it. I can't confirm this though since I've only played 2 LEGO games with linear pathways, but from the forums I've read, the LEGO video games are no different than Call of Duty games. In terms of the game's functionality, I do experience some glitches which forced me to restart the entire game, and there was even one instance where the game crashed on me. But aside from that, the game still runs at a perfectly fine 60 frames per second. And most of the issues I had were mostly because I was playing the Xbox One version, which is considered the worst port. Graphically, it looks okay if it was a Wii U game, but I'm playing this on the Xbox One, and I'm willing to bet that every version looks the exact same. I also have problems with how the cutscenes are paced. They follow alongside with the movie, but they're so stripped down. Like this chase scene. In the movie, it was a quick, fast-paced action sequence, but in this game, it's a slow, monotonous, on-rails shooter. I wouldn't say this game was bad by any means though. There are some sections where I thought was really clever. The game is brimming with fan service, and I do enjoy when those moments occur. I also really enjoy the co-op aspect as well. In case you want a friend to tag along, you can do so and they don't really hinder the experience, nor do they make the game a complete cakewalk, although they can be assholes at times. This game was just completely average. Something your kids can tolerate and enjoy, but nothing too spectacular. I'd say wait for a price drop or ignore altogether. When it comes to games I want people to recommend me, I always ask my friends to tell me what game they think I'll enjoy. This year, everybody recommended me the same game over and over and over again. Codename Kid Icarus Uprising. I was gonna give it a chance eventually, but there were a lot of circumstances that stopped me from even getting the game in the first place. First off, this game is out of print, meaning if I wanted to buy a game brand new, I would have to pay over $60 for it. I heard that the game had a very difficult control scheme, especially for left-handers. Guess which hand I right with. Everyone convinced me that Kid Icarus Uprising is a fantastic game, as if it's one of the best Nintendo 3DS games they could have ever played. And to be frankly honest, I don't see why. I will say that this type of video game is pretty good for a handheld. When playing on the go, I won't be too focused on marathoning the game, but instead playing the game in spurts. In that mindset, it's a very fun third-person shooter that I can casually play when I go back home, go to friend's house, go to school, etc, etc. And for a 3DS game, this looks amazing. Graphically, it's one of the best 3DS games I've ever seen. The environment, the scenery, it just oozes in spectacle. And all the character skits are hilarious, Palutena being my favorite character just for her trollish demeanor. These skits ridicule each character, their personalities, the game itself, other video game characters. In terms of comedy, I don't think I've laughed as hard as I have with these characters. If only I can actually hear them though. Unless you're using earphones, hell, even if you're using earphones, the sound balancing is awful. The sound effects for Pit's arrows, Pit's flying, and the enemy sound effects overwrite the comedy sketches. I swear, if it wasn't for the subtitles, I wouldn't be able to understand what these guys are mumbling. And this is on the default setting. I had to turn down the sound effects just to hear the characters properly. Okay, well, the sound settings are something that can easily be nullified, but what can't be nullified? The awful controls. Like I said, I had to buy an attachment just to nullify the already terrible controls, but even with the attachment, the controls are still bad. When you think of a second control stick for a third-person shooter, you naturally think the right stick would aim your reticle. But not in this game! The right stick actually moves the character, and there's no way you can change that. Unless you switch the face buttons for movement and the circle pad to aim. But now I have to place my left thumb on the face buttons? Yeah, no thanks. This issue would have been nullified if the right stick would actually aim rather than mimic what the left stick is doing. And I don't see why aiming with the right stick wasn't considered as an option. I guess I could use the touchscreen with my thumb and act as if that was the right stick, but it doesn't have the same feeling as aiming with an actual control stick. It's like those third-person shooting games on iPhone. The feel of the touchscreen can't replicate what the control stick can do. Even if the control scheme was fixed though, the game is repetitive. You run, you shoot, that's it. There's no strategy, no tactics, you go from point A to point B. Kill the boss, and then proceed to the next chapter. There are some chapters that implement some sort of trickery or puzzles, but they're easy to figure out. I found them really gimmicky if anything. The boss battles are no different. In fact, I actually found them easier than the stage before the boss battles. You just keep shooting the enemies until they die, and that's about it. I can understand the praise it gets from the characters' interaction with one another, but I fail to see why so many people, including my friends, consider Kid Icarus Uprising as one of the best 3DS games ever created. It's okay, but I wouldn't even consider putting this game on my top 10 list. This goes to show, hyping a game too much may backfire if you don't fulfill on that promise. $30? Okay, yeah, we've heard it all. This game was a ripoff and it should have been released as a demo rather than a $30 game. We've heard the story about how Konami is a greedy son of a gun who wants to milk every single penny onto their poor customers who thought that they would get a satisfying game when in actuality, even this very own countdown lasts longer than what Ground Zeroes has to offer. And yet, here we are in the disappointing list rather than the worst list. With all due honesty, Ground Zeroes wasn't a bad game as everyone on the internet has pointed out. It's functional, it looks amazing, and some of the side missions are interesting. But the story was bare bones, the replay value is non-existent, and the difficulty wasn't even that hard. Hard mode feels no different than normal mode, most of the side missions are just plain boring, and the main mission itself is the easiest mission to S-rank. I like the Deja Vu and Jamais Vu missions, but at the cost of $30? This entire package is not worth the price. Now that's not to say that there's no reason you shouldn't pick it up. Any Metal Gear fan should definitely get a taste of what the Phantom Pain has in stores whenever that releases. Oh wait, it's already out? Okay, so now that the full game is out, why not buy that game instead of a glorified demo? Or at best, pirate the game and send your $60 to Kojima's address. Because God knows how Konami's been doing the past decade. I'd say wait until the game is free on PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live Gold if you really want to play Ground Zeroes. Otherwise, just play Phantom Pain as it gives you over 500 times more content at only twice the value of Ground Zeroes.
Metal Gear.
Kingdom Hearts. I think I've stated real clearly that my first experience with the series was not a very pleasant one. I found the characters to be stupid, the story to be both confusing and forgetful, and the gameplay to be one of the laziest hack and slash games ever created. So I don't have any positive expectations when I played Kingdom Hearts 2. And since I finished Kingdom Hearts 2 this year, I can safely say that Kingdom Hearts 2 was a surprisingly huge contrast to the first game. Kingdom Hearts 2 from my experience was actually pretty fun. I still dislike Sora as a character and the story didn't toss any heads for me, with the exception of one particular scene. This guy right here, his name is Roxas. Being tormented by his past relations with the organization, he has suffered from a huge identity crisis. I surprisingly felt a lot of emotion attached to this character, especially with the scene that reveals his backstory. I felt that this series should have starred him instead, since I found him to be a more interesting character out of any character Kingdom Hearts created. Little did I know, there actually is a game by the name of Kingdom Hearts 358 2 Days, where it actually stars Roxas and what he had to go through the organization. So, what do I think about it? Well, you're watching the disappointing list, what the hell do you think? Kingdom Hearts 358 divided by 2 days was a huge letdown to what I was originally invested in. With the way Roxas was tormented in Kingdom Hearts 2, I wanted to learn more about him and his character, see what he was like during the organization and why he left to pursue a new life. Instead of a deeply wounded character, we get a person who I swear was lobotomized day one in the organization. Kingdom Hearts 179 Days essentially ruined Roxas for me. He was nothing more than another emo Final Fantasy character. The other characters in the organization are no better. Really, the only characters I actually really enjoy was Axel. He's a funny goofball and a legitimately good friend. He's a wise asshole, but a lovable one at that, and for a species in which all nobodies have no hearts, this guy is quite the emotional type. Though to be fair, Kingdom Hearts for me was never about the story. What matters is how the gameplay works. So what do I think about that? It's okay. Kingdom Hearts 20 x 8.95 days got some things improved, like the targeting system, and for a DS game, they made the game surprisingly controllable. It might be because I'm playing this game on a 3DS with a circle pad, but I continuously mistake the D-pad with menu navigation, so every time I try to switch my tabs, I keep moving backwards. I also like how this game is a lot more mission-based rather than open-world-based, though the missions themselves depend on what mission types they are. I'm not a huge fan of the investigation missions, but I do like these speedrunning training missions. Partners are also mixed for me. Some of the organization members are badass and get me out of a pinch, but some also does absolutely nothing to help me or the mission. I'm looking at you, Zion. But overall, I wouldn't say this game was a complete disaster. To me, Kingdom Hearts 41st Prime Number Days is just another Kingdom Hearts game with a very stupid title. 2015 was the year in which I finally caught up with the Batman Arkham series. I remember playing Arkham Asylum, but for some reason I stopped playing it for a while. I eventually got back into finishing the game so I can play Arkham City. As a sequel to Arkham Asylum, it definitely shows. The stealth sequences build up the tension, the overworld is filled with so much to do, and the lore of Batman and his villains are always entertaining to watch. The next game in the trilogy was supposed to be Arkham Knight once it releases, but I wanted to try out Arkham Origins. A lot of people from what I've seen saw Arkham Origins as a disappointment, and I can agree to that, but I still had a lot of fun playing through it. The combat system was the only improvement from what I've saw, while everything else was pretty much the same as Arkham City. But I still enjoy the villains, the story, and they kept me wanting to play through the game. Arkham Origins was a downgrade compared to Arkham City, but I didn't find the game a huge disappointment. That's where Arkham Knight comes in. Arkham Knight was supposed to be the last game in the Arkham series, so of course it had a lot of hype built into it. After my Batman marathon with Arkham Asylum through Arkham Origins, I was very much looking forward to Arkham Knight. It started out great too. Scarecrow infects Gotham City in a dramatic and spine-chilling way, and it's up to the Cape Crusader himself to stop him. Too bad that's the only major time Scarecrow shows his face. The dude barely gets any screen time, so we weren't even able to see him in action. The main enemy of Batman Arkham Knight is, well, it's in the title, the Arkham Knight. I never read any of the comics, nor have I ever really seen any appearance of this guy in any medium. But my introduction to this dude is just as unbearable as Robin in Schumacher's Batman and Robin. The dude keeps boasting about, oh, how much he wants revenge on Batman, and how he's going to kill him, but he's been nothing but a pathetic wimp. Dude gets his ass kicked every scene he appears in, and despite being a freaking henchman of the Scarecrow, he shows up in like every single scene. He doesn't even get that much development. He just says he'll be Batman without even doing so. I'm going to slightly spoil Arkham Knight and, to a certain extent, the other Batman Arkham games a little bit, so if you're still looking forward to playing it, go to this timestamp showing the annotations and click it to get to the number 4 segment. I'll give you 5 seconds. The Joker is back, but you may be thinking, wait a minute, how is he back? Didn't he die back in Arkham City? Yes, but this Joker is actually a figment of Batman's imagination due to the injected blood that Batman received back in Arkham City. Storyline-wise, it actually makes sense for the Joker to return to the game, and they even got Mark Hamill back to voice his role. But, I'm seriously getting tired of Joker. I know Rocksteady means well, but I want them to develop more of the villains. I like the Joker and all, but I feel he's way too overplayed in the Batman games. Joker, I love you and your evil shenanigans, but you seriously need to take a break from the spotlight. The story was bare bones and disappointing, but I will say the open world is large and the game itself feels improved. The combat system is now further enhanced with new enemies to shake up the pace and new abilities to cleverly beat up your enemies. But I feel like the stealth sections were more of the same in previous Batman games. It seems that the game is more focused on beat 'em up sections since you can even kill armed enemies with your fists. While the open world combat controls and missions were slightly improved, the story was just non-existent, and the new Batmobile sequences were way too repetitive. I swear to God, 80% of this game is just using the Batmobile. It's cool the first couple of times, but now I'm really getting sick of it. Oh, and the awful install times. Urgh! To be fair though, this is mostly the fault of the PS4's hardware than the actual game, but I'm still gonna bitch about it. Also, this happened!
Just get us there in one piece, Batman.
Commissioner Gordon, ladies and gentlemen, making the laws of physics his bitch. I'm disappointed in Platinum Games. What happened, guys? You're basically the king of beat-em-ups, one of the greatest developers of over-the-top epicness and fun, challenging fight sequences. You wanna know what happened? Activision. I pull my blame solely on this company for not giving these guys enough time to polish and perfect this game. Though with what Platinum Games created, when compared to other Rush titles, it's a marvel why this game's on the worst list. The game functions, I guess, and the graphics are cel-shaded stylistically, and I do enjoy the ABBA sections as it changes the pace from the monotonous beat-em-up style. The problem with these sections is that it gets really repetitive real quickly. You will be fighting the exact same enemies over and over again until you complete the level or beat the game. The bending powers don't even give you enough of a distinction to use each and every one of them properly. Instead, you'll most likely use earth and water for the entire game since fire is completely useless and air is not unlocked until the very end of the game. The game practically resorts to beat up a bunch of guys to progress through the stage and beat the same boss battles that appear in every single stage. It doesn't really change until you get to the end of the game, which is sadly the best part of the game. And it sucks that you have to go through a bunch of boring missions just to get to the good part. The game is only 15 bucks, so I guess I'm expecting too much from it. But with games like Shovel Knight, Towerfall Ascension, and anything from Way Forward, compare those $15 games to Legend of Korra, this game is setting a very low standard for digital-only games. As a game, I don't consider this bad by any means. It's decent, but as a Platinum game, this is easily their worst work. I pray Transformers Devastation won't repeat history. Remember when I said The Legend of Korra was Platinum Games' least memorable work? I technically lied. The original Devil May Cry has not aged very well. The story was bland and very forgetful, the characters are boring and really lame. Dante himself is not what I originally imagined him to be. I thought he would be a cocky fun badass, kinda like the male version of Bayonetta, but I barely recognize a single thing he says. The voice acting is terrible, but hey, most games back in 2001 were pretty bad, so I was willing to forgive that, I guess. But I didn't like the gameplay, mostly because of the difficulty, and I don't mean difficulty as in the game is balls to the walls hard. I mean the difficulty is very inconsistent. This Scorpion is one of the early boss fights, and I found it to be difficult until you exploit his AI, where I died multiple times in the first couple of runs, until I found out he could get stuck behind these 3 things, and all I have to do is just wail on him, avoid his projectiles, and poof, he's easy as pie. This Phantom fuck gave me a tough time, but that's only because I had no range. I was confined in this cage barrier, so dodging was not an option. And this was just the mini-boss. The actual boss battle was the Scorpion again, except he's easier than his first encounter. Though on the counterpart, I did have fun with Dante's Shadow clone. I think this is one of the best boss fights in the game next to the final boss. This guy pretty much is like fighting against a clone of Dante. He dodges and he has a powerful sword. He doesn't have guns, but that didn't bother me too much. I do like the over-the-top nature, but I feel like they could have gone all the way. While I enjoyed most of the boss battles, I found the journeys to the boss battles to be boring and nothing more than a hallway simulator. The minor enemies are not that hard even if they are surrounding me, but good god is this place confusing to navigate. The camera is horrendous, the platform sections are terrible. I guess the graphics at the time looked really nice, but I don't like Dante's expressionless face. Devil May Cry was not a good start for me, but I probably expected too much from the game, especially from the same creators of Bayonetta. But hey, it's Platinum's early work, and I'm sure that for Devil May Cry 2, they'll surely improve and deliver the fun, zany, and wacky DMC game that we will no doubt enjoy. Yeah, wait until the worst list. Sonic the Hedgehog. Why do you always, and I mean always, disappoint me? I swear to God, I'm trying my best to enjoy their games, find anything amazing to say about it, but Sega, I can't like your main series if you keep shitting on them. I know I sound like a broken record by now, but Colors and Generations were the closest thing to capture the feel of Sonic and make it controllable, pumping, and overall fun! Why is that so damn hard to make, Sega? If there's anything I can at least appreciate from Unleashed, is that it inspired the Sonic team to make Generations and Colors. That's it. Out of all the 3D Sonic games out there, Sonic Unleashed admittedly was the least worst out of the Sonic games I played. Mostly since the Sonic portion of the game was legitimately fun. It gives the player the adrenaline rush of high-speed action while controlling fluidly as well. To be frank, I might actually like these speedy Sonic sections in Sonic Unleashed more so than Sonic Generations and Sonic Colors. Minus the abysmal frame rate, of course. But as amazing as these Sonic sections in Sonic Unleashed captures, when it comes to speed, we have to deal with the terrible, misplaced, and drawn-out Werehog stages. I don't mind these Werehog stages so much if only they made them shorter, fleshed out the combat, and fleshed out the stages. Still better than Sonic Boom, I knew, but nothing too spectacular. I don't see any reason why I would ever use the square button if the triangle button does an equal amount of damage while giving me more range in the process. But the worst offender for me are the solar and lunar collectibles that are mandatory for you to obtain in order to progress through the game. I don't care for these medallions mostly since they are so hard to find in the first place. I don't have a problem with them in general. If anything, I think including them would be nice for revisiting things one may have missed out, and or maybe having to unlock some sort of ability, or even an achievement. But forcing the player to collect these medallions just makes the gamepad longer than it needs to be. Oh, and the goddamn abysmal frame rates. This game can never run at a constant 60 frames per second or even at a 30 frames per second, and I have no idea why. I mean, for the speed sections, I could kind of understand, somewhat. I mean, Generations managed to run the game at a solid 60 frames per second, and Colors didn't take too much in terms of graphic fidelity, but somehow they perform even worse on the Werehog stages and in the overworld. With Sonic stages, I don't know, maybe they focus too much on blast processing than they did with smoothing out the frame rate, but this game barely looks any better than a GameCube game, and yet it still performs under 30 frames per second? Maybe at the time it was still brand new architecture and Sega still wanted to learn how to make a game for a next-gen console? Okay, well what other games were released back in 2008 for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3? Metal Gear Solid 4, Devil May Cry 4, Assassin's Creed, Valkyria Chronicles, Ninja Gaiden 2, Bioshock, Grand Theft Auto 4, Soul Calibur 4, Little Big Planet, Tales of Vesperia, all of which still look amazing and beautiful as of today! So Sonic Unleashed has no excuse! With that being said, I know I've been really negative, and I want to stress out that the speedy Sonic stages were that good. It manages to keep me from putting this game on the worst list. That being said, I never thought this game would be amazing by any standards. but I was still curious since a lot of people consider this game to be one of the best. I'm judging these games from what I expected to how it disappointed me. And the number one game disappointed me immensely. It may not be as bad as Sonic Unleashed, but with higher expectation comes with higher consequences if that game fails to deliver. I really don't like how people continuously neglect story in a fighting game. Just because a fighting engine is great and amazing doesn't mean it has the excuse to make a shitty story. That's why I praise games like Skullgirls and Mortal Kombat, because they actually took dedication and care into developing the game's lore on top of providing a fun action-packed fighting game. And when I say story, I don't mean those snippet endings after you beat arcade mode with a certain character. I'm talking about the actual story mode implemented in the fighting game. Like Dead or Alive 5. I know I praised the story mode when I first played through the game, but wow did my opinion change drastically when I replayed the story mode. The majority of characters in the story mode didn't accomplish much for the story itself. There were a lot of repeats and reruns, some of them even retconning each other, and not every character gets equal amount of spotlight. Or what about King of Fighters 13, where they focus more on the characters' interaction rather than the actual plot? Who the hell is this Ash guy? I don't know, but apparently the game thinks my wearing her stripper outfit warrants an explanation. And then we get to what I believe is the worst offender for terrible story in a fighting game.
Persona 4 Arena!
Unfortunately, I played the game in 2014, so we'll have to settle with its sequel instead. Persona 4 Arena's story mode was cluttered and repetitive, and while Persona 4 Arena Ultimax made some improvements, the story mode should not be this damn long. Boredom after boredom of nonsensical dialogue. Atlas, you do know that a story mode for a video game needs more than just the story, right? There's nothing too spectacular about the story mode whatsoever, and it's the main reason why I found this game to be a huge disappointment. Persona 4 Arena's story mode was bad, and I expected at least some mistakes to be corrected for Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. Sure, they've improved the interface, but the story itself is just so boring! I didn't feel like I was playing a video game, I felt like watching a visual novel. A video game should be a video game foremost. If you're going to make a story mode, make it unique, make it interesting, make it so that you don't have to mash the A button just to skip the dialogue. Every battle you start off with begins the exact same way. A barrier drops down, and two combatants have to fight. Games like Mortal Kombat and Skullgirls didn't need to rely on the same fighting tournaments rule set to transition into a fight. They had an actual story! Hell, even Dead or Alive 5 to a certain extent didn't rely on the because we're in a fighting game tournament, we have to fight mentality. Persona 4 Arena and Persona 4 Arena Ultimax always uses this excuse to justify a fight scene. And when the fight scenes do appear, it's always the same. One-on-one fight usually against a shadow. Going back to both Mortal Kombat and Skullgirls, they've always spiced up the fight sequences. With Skullgirls, they might spice things up with a doubles or even a triple fight. And with Mortal Kombat, there may be unplayable characters, double battles, or even a boss rush mode. What does Arena Ultimax have? You fight shadows. And that's all you get. At least the fight mechanics are good, I guess. You have light and heavy attacks, and you also have light Persona and heavy Persona attacks. Really, the only reason to buy this game at all is to just play it as a fighting game. If you want to enjoy the story mode, you can just play arcade mode, and that pretty much has the exact same experience as story mode, with the only difference being it doesn't take 25 hours to beat it! But still, a fighting game should be more than just a simple fighting game. It needs to have even more substance to justify the $60 price tag. And unfortunately, Persona 4 Arena Ultimax does not live up to the hype. I'm basically through and through, yeah. If I'm already raging on the disappointing list, good God, am I not looking forward to the worst list?
Clench my fist in pockets tight. Fire mist tower rays like a marshall's tongue, dabbling in moonlight.
Okay, well, what other games were released back in 2008 for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3? Assassin's Creed Unity? Nope. I thought I could have fooled me twice. This is gonna be an interesting blooper reel. Okay. Metal Gear Solid 4, Devil May Cry 4, Assassin's Creed, Legend of Gaiden. What is that? Games that were released back in 2008 for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Shut up, dog.